things overrated in language learning. Speaking, speaking, speaking. I practice musical instruments. And we have to actually play our instrument. It's not enough listening to. But there is a main difference. We think that languages is just another thing that we learn. We are projected, conceived to speak. That means to understand and speak language. Our throat here is constructed in a way that we can even die because our food gets into our lungs, but this construction allows us to speak. So in the evolution of people, it was more important to speak than if some people died, choked. What does this tell us? That we have physical things, adjustments, and there's nothing in our mind? I think there is. And some other scholars thought there is. Assume there is that. Let's assume there is that. Do we have an evolutionary software that allows us to play a musical instrument? No. We say, okay, but there are other different languages. Yes, but we always use this system, and our brain controls mouth, vocal cords. And in spite of the fact there are gestures that work together with spoken languages, most of the work and what we say language and they have the characteristics of language is spoken. It's what we say that conveys a meaning that can be all the characteristics that makes us different from. Now, I don't want to get into all these specifics, but there are characteristics of the language that are different from all the other systems that animals have, and when we gesture, sometimes it's not that different from dogs wagging their tails or other systems. So what is typical of the human race is this conventional thing called language, spoken language. So, if speaking was that important as understanding, and understanding is connected with speaking and they go hand in hand, we would speak and understand at the same time when you learn our first language. And whoever has children or has seen children learn to speak will see that they acquire the ability to understand far before that the ability to speak. listening prepares us for the other phase, that means speaking. Even people who can't actually speak, but who are not deaf, they can write everything, and they acquire the language even if they don't actually speak, or they use other signs like with other systems with their hands and their arms. People stress speaking. Even if you haven't been speaking the language. I know there are movements, I know. But these kind of movements, they become much more easy to do. It's very, very clear, the sound. You're almost ready. You try some few times, like birds out of their nests. They haven't been flying a lot. They just move now and then their wings. But when they fly immediately. Otherwise they would die. I think the same happens with when you have prepared your wings through all of listening. Our brain has the ability, if the sound is very clear in your mind, to produce it. If you do, that's something I'm thinking right now. If the sound you produce is wrong, even you will understand, and then you will adjust until you hear the sound that you hear from other people. For example, I have a very good ear for sounds. I don't, but let's assume I have a very good ear for pitches. When I start playing another instrument, maybe I don't know the instrument, but I know if I'm in tune or out of tune, even if the instrument is another instrument, because I know the pitch. So if I know the pitch, which means if somebody mispronounces the language I'm studying, I notice that. If I notice when foreigner mispronounce the language I'm learning, I'm almost ready to speak it, and it will be much easier than people start it immediately when it's not clear in their mind what they have to pronounce. Because this is the main difference. Listening to the oppositions that in your language do not exist, but in the other language exist. It takes a time, you understand the words similar. I always say the funny one, the cock and the coke, or the bald and the bold. So you need, for this comprehensible input, to understand when somebody is bald, losing hair, or one is bold, the way he behaves, courageous, when you use these oppositions, you use to understand, are clear in your mind, you know that are, in a way you try to reproduce, otherwise, okay, maybe you don't reproduce exactly the same sound, you try, you feel the difference, because you have been exposed to this and you've been able to understand the difference. People who don't understand the difference, when they cannot tell, I mean, to them it's the same thing, it's the same damn thing, because they cannot tell. Even if they are pronounced different, we use our previous knowledge of sound that are in opposition from our first language. If they are not in the first language, we just hear for example, wok to cook. The Chinese pan is no different from wok, which is to walk. Maybe in our language is not such a difference. In English there is. Court from cot. There is a difference. Maybe in your language there are just two different kind of but in English they differentiate a word from another. Once you understand these words and you hear in different contexts their meaning, and maybe in the same sentence use this word, for example, I caught the cot, you will understand these two sounds, because you need this difference in order to understand, and you need to understand. So little by little, by hook or by crook, you will understand the difference between caught and caught, or cat and caught. If it's English, British English, or American English. So you are prepared. But since there is an inborn ability to transform, and that is what I say, an inborn ability to transform sounds into sounds we have here, from sounds that got out our mouth, there is this inner ability. However much we think that there isn't, but there isn't just because we haven't been exposed to the right input. This input has not only the sounds, but the sounds used to understand the language. So we use these sounds in opposition to understand it. If I just expose the two sounds, I don't do any workout concerning these differences. For example, teach Italian and there is pala and palla. I can tell you 100 times that palla bowl has two L's. But if I say I want to dig, I need the pala, shovel. Okay, let's give me the pala to dig. I want to play football. Do you have a pala? I actually force you to understand the difference. Maybe you're not ready immediately to speak, but believe you me, if you do this groundwork, it will be easier to speak. No, they want from the beginning. You know why? Because a little it's up to the people who pay for their languages, their language learning. People are anxious to speak. They what's the word for horse? They bite the... there is an idiom. Okay, wait. I will speak about this another time. I will tell you the idiom I was looking for.